China's ruling Communist Party approved a revised charter that enshrined President Xi Jinping's name in its guiding principles. So why is that a big deal, really? Well, there have been only two leaders previously who have been given that recognition. One is, of course, the man who spearheaded the Communist Revolution, Mao Zedong, and another one was Deng Xiaoping. The elevation comes at a time when younger leaders are earmarked for standing committee membership, making Xi Jinping's influence on the select committee even stronger. So what does this shift from collectivism that's at the heart of China's communism to the dominance of a charismatic leader imply for China and the world? That's the question that we'll raise in this discussion, given that Xi Jinping is yet to announce a successor. He could also exert his control on the party well past the retirement age of 68. But before we get to that, let's hear the key takeaways from the Communist Party Congress, which concluded earlier today. Tom Mackenzie of Bloomberg filed this report earlier in the day.
It's an arcane piece of Chinese Communist Party political theatre, but by enshrining President Xi's thoughts in the party charter, it elevates him to the same level as Mao Zedong, and it suggests that his influence over the party and the country will extend well beyond the next 5 years, potentially for decades to come. Now our attention switches to Wednesday, around 11:45. That's when we're expecting the Politburo Standing Committee to be unveiled. Likely 7 men who will follow President Xi and Premier Li Keqiang onto the stage on the red carpet. That will give us an indication of how successful President Xi has been in elevating his allies, both to the Politburo and to the Standing Committee. And we'll get a clearer idea of who is going to be directing his policy agenda and implementing that agenda, both domestically and internationally.
Well, joining us on this discussion is Indira Ravindran, Adjunct Fellow of China Studies at the Gateway House, Indian Council on Global Relations. She's on the phone line. And we also have Senior Fellow at Asia Society, Isaac Stone. Guys, thanks so much for joining us on Bloomberg Quinn. Isaac, I'd like to start by asking you, what does Xi Jinping's elevation mean to China's Communist Party and for the region?
What it means for China's Communist Party is that frankly, a lot more of the same that we've seen over the last 5 years. So growing influence of the party in every aspect of Chinese life, and also growing influence of China, the nation, as it continues to exert power and strength with its relationship with its neighbors, including Japan, India, South Korea. So I think we're going to see a lot more assertion from China moving forward.
Right, and Indira, thanks so much for joining us on the phone line as well. I'd also like to ask you, considering all this talk about naming a successor, do you think, or do you expect Xi Jinping to announce a successor soon?
The successor is not usually, and it's not announced. So what we will look for tomorrow is to see the age of the other 5 people on the standing committee. So Xi Jinping and Premier Li Keqiang, they are confirmed. So the other 5 will be announced tomorrow and will be introduced to the party. And then we will have an idea. If there is anyone under the age of 60, then it's likely that they will continue beyond, that they will take over. It will be a peaceful transition of power as it has been the last 3 generations. And the likely candidates for that are Chen Min-er and Hu Chunhua. But these names have not come up right now. We are hearing the names of trusted aides and just people who would be happy to retire from the Politburo Standing Committee. So this is huge, actually, but bigger than the succession issue, in my opinion, is having Xi Jinping's thought enshrined in the Constitution. This is very, very big news.
Right, Indira, and
we had.
Right, absolutely. When you talk about it, well, essentially it's Xi Jinping's thought on socialism with Chinese characteristics for a new era, and that's going to be a guiding principle for the Chinese Communist Party. Yes. And also it becomes more relevant considering that Hu Jintao and Jiang Zemin didn't get their names enshrined in the Constitution in this particular way. And it's not just getting your name enshrined, it's also, this is not even a theory, this is essentially Xi Jinping's thoughts.
Yes, so there is a hierarchy. The word thought or jury is the highest in the hierarchy, right? And so that's for Marx, Lenin, and Mao Zedong. And even Deng Xiaoping, as transformative, I mean, he was one of the greatest leaders of the 20th century, but his is a theory only. And Hu Jintao and Jiang Zemin had concepts without the authorship in the constitution. And all of these people, other than Mao Zedong, the next three generation of leaders had their names, had their concepts or names in the constitution after their term. So for Xi Jinping to have it during just midway through his term, at the start of the second term, and with his name, with thought, this is huge. We had been anticipating this, and the rumors had picked up steam in the last couple of weeks. But now that it has happened, all of us inside China and observers from outside, everyone is just stunned, because this is very, very big.
Right, and Isaac, Xi Jinping also spoke, of course, about taking China into this new era. And, considering that a stronger China is crucial for the region and the world, is this centralization of power, do you think it'll sit well with the party ideology?
Yeah, I wouldn't say a stronger China is crucial for this region or the world. I'd say it's happening, and that's the way the world is going, but it's not something that's necessary for Asia in any sort of historical sense. So I think it's important to watch how a rising China chafes against some of India's ambitions, some of Japan's ambitions. And, Xi Jinping, as he's come up and as China has risen over the last 5 years, has really tried to paint, to further the idea that former party secretary Hu Jintao liked to talk about of a peaceful rise. Xi Jinping once said that, China is like a awakening lion, but a peaceful awakening lion. And then he, got rid of using that phrase because it sounds a little scary and intimidating. So I think there's the language that the party uses to describe where China's going, and then there's the actuality of China's relationships with its neighbors.
Right, and also, I'd like to say that to you as well. Do you really think that, this rise, this meteoric rise for Xi Jinping would actually mean, what does it translate to when it comes to countries like India and other countries in the region?
What does Xi Jinping's rise translate to?
Essentially the centralization of power, or this shift in the narrative.
Yes, absolutely. You're right to pick up on that, because there was a tradition mandated by Deng Xiaoping to have collective leadership. This was to enhance the party's legitimacy in the eyes of the people, and also in the eyes of the world, and especially in the eyes of foreign investors. They didn't want to invest in a country which was going to be ruled by a quasi-dictatorship. So the collective leadership system was working well. So this is a reversal, having Xi Jinping thought, and also the anti-corruption drive. It has had some positive results, but it's mostly also what it has done is eliminated all effective opposition within the party. And it's important to understand that in a multi-party democracy like India, or a bi-party democracy like the United States, there are checks and balances within the system, across the political system. But inside the Communist Party of China, there are internal checks and balances, and this works through various factions in the party. So if the anti-corruption campaign has muted these internal checks and balances, and yes, there has been positive outcome in the sense of boosting public confidence in anti-corruption and against graft. But the downside is there is no visible viable opposition right now. And Xi Jinping's ideology states that this is a means of restoring the party's control over all aspects of life in China, over the economy, over the military, over culture, ideology, the media, internet, every aspect of social and political life. And this is also a way of restoring people's faith in the party. So with the party firmly behind him and with this re-centralization of power and enhanced control over the economic tools, yes, definitely it's going to have a huge impact, especially since One Belt, One Road, or the Belt Road Initiative, is also now found a place in the Constitution. That is going to become official policy. So all national resources will be used to push this policy outward. It will definitely have an impact on the region, most certainly on India's national interest and India's room for maneuver. So this doesn't have to be a bad thing. There are diplomatic tools available. There's dialogue, and there's a need for greater transparency from China's side now.
Right, Indira, absolutely. And you did mention, well, how this re-centralization of powers actually come to being. But I wanted to ask you one more thing. Considering that the retirement age is at 68, this massive support that we've seen over the past week for Xi Jinping, considering all of this, do you think that, he'd really stick to that? Or there has been talk that, perhaps what this effectively means is that he could be in power indefinitely?
Yes, this is the big question this is the big question. Actually, a lot can happen in 5 years. There's no way to tell. Tomorrow we will have our first indication in the composition of the standing committee. We'll have our first indication. But a lot can happen in 5 years. And people are watching, and people are, at the moment, there is a lot of public support for Xi Jinping. But there are also... the party is aware that there is also growing discontent, which is why the principal contradiction identified by the party, the principal contradiction is Marxist dialectical terms of figuring out what exactly needs to be done in order to prevent a revolution. It's as simple as that. And according to this, they are aware that people's demands, needs are rising, for a better life, and not just for material satisfaction, but also for expressing themselves, for better cultural life, for their aspirations. So the party is watching. They are aware that people want certain things. People have certain aspirations. So if there is going to be a perception that that he will hold on to power, for an infinite time, for an indeterminate period, there is going to be backlash, and the party is very sensitive to that. And Xi Jinping is a person who actually knows that he's most effective within the context of the party. So I think we will have to wait and watch, and a lot can happen in 5 years. That's the best I can say right now. And I do want to make one point. I do agree with Isaac Stone that historically there's nothing which says that China's infinite rise is critical for the region. And historically, there have been other great powers in the region, and great powers have coexisted in Asia historically. So China should be aware of that.
Right, Indira. Isaac, thanks so much for speaking with us on Bloomberg Quint. And all of you watching, thanks so much for tuning in. And tomorrow is when we'll be getting you the update on this story. So stay tuned to Bloomberg Quint.